So hi everyone, good evening. Thanks a lot for joining this evening. I know it's after work, and we're all a bit tired of having all these Zoom meetings. But I'm really glad that you showed up to get an update on the new constitution and bylaws. It's maybe not the most exciting topic that there could be, but I think it's an important one. And the goal of today is actually to show or explain to you a bit more in detail why we did it and how we did it and what was the outcome. And then maybe most important at the end to answer questions. So you can ask your questions at the end or in the chat. As you all have seen, we are recording this meeting with the idea that later on we'll put it on YouTube so that people who cannot join us today can have a look at that meeting later on. And with that, I suggest we start right away, and I will share my screen. So you should see my screen now, and I'll start the presentation. I hope that works. So, as I said, it's about the new constitution and bylaws, and I gave this example already at the HM last year. This is a mobile phone at that time from the year 2000. And this is a mobile phone or a smartphone these days, so 22 years later. You can see many things have changed. And it's actually the same for our constitution and bylaws. The first constitution and bylaws were written or finalized, approved September 19th, in the year 2000. And since then, in the last 22 years, we had 11 revisions. And as you can imagine, if you make revisions, like if you renovate a house all the time, you can try your best, but it's not a new house in the end. And so what happened with our constitution and bylaws is that some of the content is maybe not ideal. And one thing I really want to stress is that I'm not saying that it's not good or so. All we want to do is basically say that it's not ideal and we can optimize, and that's actually the goal of the whole exercise. And I want to give you some examples of the content, what you think are the issues. And as I said, it's just examples. So one, of course, is that some things are outdated, and the obvious one is, as an example, the de facto and the founding diplomates. Even though we say in our constitution and bylaws that these memberships are now closed, it's still in there. So it takes almost half a page, and these are the kind of information that are not really needed and makes the whole thing more complicated if you add something that is not relevant anymore. Another thing that we notice is that it's quite often complicated. So it's written in a but in a complicated way, and we think we can simplify it. And I give you here an example again. Don't read through all of that. Just what I want to point out here. The yellow parts is basically what is said about the use of the title diplomat ECLAM or of the EBVS title. And it basically says when you can use it. And as you can see, it's several paragraphs. Whereas now we actually propose to really shorten that to make it clearer when you can use these two titles, and then refer to the regulations by EVVS, because if the regulations by EVVS will change, we don't have to change our constitution again. And that again avoids all these revisions every year. Another example is that sometimes you have duplicates or information twice in the constitution and bylaw. And this is the example of Article 4.2 and 5.1. So it's about, on one hand, qualification for membership. So it says you have to be eligible or licensed or licensed or eligible to be licensed to practice veterinary medicine in European country. And the same thing is said actually later on again for the candidate who want to become a member of the college. So it's twice in there, and I think we can combine that in once again to shorten it and to make it simple. Another one, which it's actually quite frequent, is that we have a lot of details in these constitution bylaws at the moment. And a lot of these details are more on an operational level. So they're not really relevant for yet to give the frame or what we do, or it's more about how we do it. And usually how we do it is not really part of the constitution and bylaws. And I give you an example here. So this is actually the Article 4 about the membership fees, how it is at the moment. Again, don't read through that, but I just want to show you that even in this paragraph, we have 4 dates given when when we should collect the fee until when they have to be paid, when there should be send a reminder, when there should be another reminder, and so on. So it's very, very detailed. And this is, again, if you want to change anything in that, be it just a date or so, you have to, again, make a revision, get all the members to vote and so on. So it's very cumbersome, so to say. And the other or the last point I want to bring across is actually that sometimes the constitution and bylaws are not really reflecting what we are doing. Of course, the majority is, but there are details which we are not doing as it is written. And I give you again the example of the membership fees. This is actually specifying that if someone didn't pay by the end of February, they will get another request, and actually there will be a 20% additional charge within 30 days. If they miss that again, there will be another 20%, and they have time until end of May, and so on and so forth. So it's very detailed, and Janet does. I mean, she reminds people, but she will not increase or give that penalty, for example. So we are not following actually what we have in there, and again, it's a very detailed description of the process, which is not necessary at this stage. So altogether, I think the whole thing sometimes seems to me like a dinosaur. It's quite old. There is an echo. So it's quite old in a sense of complicated. When it's, I have to say, when I joined ECLAM, especially council, it was hard for me to understand what exactly needs to be done and when does it need to be done and what is actually the main parts. And with talking to colleagues, they had a similar impression. So what we aim to do now is to get rid of the dinosaur, and we want to start to kiss. So that's why I had in the title Looking for a Kiss. And KISS stands for we want to try to keep it short and simple. And please, when you read through now the new constitution and bylaws, this is always what we had in mind. We really want to have it simple and short. And of course, there is an overall vision for that KISS, so to say. So what we want is basically to break down the information to the specific areas where it's needed. So we will start, or we wanted to start with the constitution, which is, if you compare it with a house, it's basically the frame of the house. It's the basement, it's the walls, it's maybe the entrance to the house, but that's it. So we just define there what it's all about. Then in the bylaws, we actually add more details like the rooms. This could be, for example, how many rooms do we have, which could be how many committees do we have. So more details about how this house should look like. And important for the two things, so how the house should look like, the members have to say. So basically the members are the one that make changes. So for example, if the members decide that our house should have a third floor or a second floor instead of just one floor, then the members can say that. But afterwards, when it comes about how the actual rooms, let's say, should look like in the house. So for example, what kind of carpet should be there, or the furniture, then this is about the policies and procedures. So really the detailed how we do it in these rooms. And there, those who are in charge of that on an operational level are the ones that will then define these policies and procedures. And these will be depending on the area, either the committees or the council. And the big advantage here is if we change anything in the policies and procedures, we can change and adapt that pretty fast. And as you all know, in the last years, EBVS has changed a lot of their policies and procedures. And we always had to change our constitution and bylaws accordingly. And in the future, if something like that happened, most likely we will be able to adopt our policies and procedures pretty fast without having to involve everyone and get all the signatures and so on. So that would be the overall vision, and I get back to the policies and procedures at the end. But now I want to spend a few minutes on basically telling you about the changes we've done, and don't be afraid, I will not go article by article because that would be far too much and it's actually quite time consuming. We are preparing a document with the old constitutional bylaw saying for each paragraph what has happened to it. You know, if you have changed it, if you have moved it to the bylaw, to the policies and procedure, or if we have basically got rid of it. So that will come, but now it's basically on a more an overview level. And I think the most important thing usually is actually, is actually what has not changed. So what we did not change is the requirements for becoming a member. I think that's an important point to make. We did not change any requirements for the residencies or the residency durations, or how many times you can take the exam. All these things are the same. We also did not change the publication requirement, so that's all also the same. And we did not change the exam per se. But here I have to say, the exam, actually how it's done, it's not even in the constitutional bylaws at the moment. So there's nothing to change there. What we also did not change is the need for recertification. I mean, that's also a basic requirement by EVBS. But what we have done is actually we moved the procedure details to the policies and procedures. So I can show you the text. This was the text, or is the text at the moment in our bylaws, how you actually can get recertified. Again, it's basically the procedure, how to do it. And this is now in the new in Constitution, a few sentences with the key points. So the key point is every 5 years, according to BEVS, there can be an extra year for diplomates if needed. And then the process is done according to our policies and procedures. And again, it's valid for 5 years and there will be a fee. So these are the main points that we defined. So it's our house, but then how we do it, it's in the policies and procedures. Another thing which we have not changed is the fees, who defines which fee. And it's still for the membership fee, which is our most important income actually, and that's the AGM. So it's again the members who can decide, and all other fees such as credential, examination fees, and etc. they are defined by council. That has been in the past like that, and it's still the same, it didn't change. We also didn't change the appeal procedure as such. I think that's especially for EBVS, that's an important thing. So we have left the appeal procedure, a process in there. Again, what we changed, we took some of the details into the policies and bylaws, again, to make it easier to understand as well. Before I go to the major changes, I want to show you actually an example for the KISS. Also for keep it short and simple, I've shown this example already at the AGM, but I think it illustrates pretty well what we've tried to do and hopefully have achieved. So this is the text about the general meeting. And if we go through that text to basically sentence by sentence, so what we did, we really went through the text and discussed or decided, is this relevant? Do we have to keep it? So this would be the yellow parts, for example, that we added to the constitution. And then if something was, debatable, if we need it, then we discussed it among council, and in the end, either decided to keep or left or delete it. And here it's the example of, it said that the AGM should be during the annual meeting of ESLAF or at some other appropriate meeting agreed by council. And we thought, well, this is actually making it unnecessarily complicated. So let's just say that it will be at least once a year a meeting in each calendar year, and the meeting can be in person or virtual. The other thing was a special general meeting was foreseen in the current constitution and bylaws. That 10% of the members could ask for that 3 months in advance, and then the president needs to define a date and so on. We discussed that in length, but it turned out that actually there was never a special general meeting asked for in the last 22 years. So there's a very low likelihood that this will happen. And if you look at what the AGM does, the main duty, so to say, is actually the constitution and bylaws. And if someone would like to change those, they can actually make a proposal, or at least 10 members are needed to make a proposal to the constitution. So it's still possible to make a change and so on. So the members can still be active, but it's not by calling for a special general meeting that has never been done before. And the last thing we had in there was the quorum. That's maybe an important change. It was defined that we need 25% of the members at the meeting to have a quorum. But again, it makes it complicated first to find out, how many or 25% of the current members, and then to make sure that they are there. And it also doesn't reflect how usually votes are done. So if you have a vote in your country, there's also no quorum needed to make sure that enough people are present. And since our HM and so on are actually mandatory for the members anyway, and they have a 30 days advance period of notification, we thought, well, there's no need to have this quorum, and we just said we go instead of the usual 2/3 of members have to agree to the change. Okay, that's an example for the KISS. And then I would go to the major changes, so things that we have changed. And of course, as you all already know and discussed at the last AGM, we changed or we fused the training and credential committees to the education committee. So it's one committee now with the same duties as the training and credential committees before. And we again hope to make through this change to make it first of all better for the residents so that they have a better supervision or follow up during the residency, but also to avoid that we have double the work for the same kind of assessment of the candidates. Then also new is a mock exam committee. As you all know, for the last, Janet will know exactly, but really several years we had a mock exam organized by forgot his pre-name, Wilkinson, and he basically organized that for several years. And we thought, well, it's about time to make this visible, and also to get that he gets recognized for that, or the committee gets recognized for that. And it's an important, I think, preparation for the residencies. And the last reason to do it was also, to make it clear that it's independent from the exam committee, to make that clear differentiation, that there is no conflict of interest at all, that these are two separate committees. We also changed that we got rid of the nomination committee. The reason for that is in the last, again, Janet will know, but at least 5 or 6 or 7 years, we've never used it. Again, we didn't follow that, what we have decided or written down. We didn't go for a nomination committee to get new members of the council or committees. So we thought, well, if we don't follow it, but it doesn't make sense to keep it. And one thing which is not in there yet, but could come soon, most likely next year, is actually a resident committee or a resident representative in council. The reason for that is that something that EBVS initiated, and they will vote on that, all colleges in June. And if it's decided that this kind of resident, or that residents should be represented in the college, then we will have to discuss how to implement that. So, but that's coming soon, and most likely at the AGM next year we will have a vote on that, how we want it. Another important thing to mention is actually the council structure and how council works. That also has changed slightly. The first thing we changed is actually that we lowered the number of ordinary council members from 3 to at least 2, or a minimum of 2, with the option to add more if needed. And the reason for that is we realized that recently we have problems to get new council members. So right now we only have 2 ordinary members, so we would not again fulfill the what we have defined once. So we thought at least 2 we need, and if we need more, so for example, if the college grows, we can add more as needed. Also, what we changed is that we added the possibilities for ad hoc members to council, and that these ad hoc members are at the meetings, but they have no voting rights. And we made all the committee chairs now ad hoc members. And the reason for that is in the past, we had usually a council member who was a liaison to one of the committees, which worked more or less well. So depending on the person, there was a very good interaction or maybe not such a good interaction. And then we had the committee head or chairs to report to council every 3 months. And of course, as you can imagine, if you have an update every 3 months, you don't have the update when it's needed. It's maybe 2 months later or too early. And that's why we said the committee chairs will be ad hoc members of council with no voting rights. We also decided to have not specified anymore the secretary and treasurer position. The reason for that is basically, I will tell in a second, but the idea now is that these duties that were specified under the secretary and the treasurer are now assigned to council in general. So basically the council has to make sure that all the duties from the previous treasurer are fulfilled. And we have also now, as we've had in the past with the so-called secretariat, we call it now services of consultant. So council may enlist support for the operational management of the college by consultants. And this gives us actually full flexibility. So council can now either assign people, for example, for the task of a treasurer to send out the bills, or they can have, as we do right now with Janet, as a consultant who actually does it for the council. So I think with that situation, we have a full flexibility depending on how many people are there, how much time they have to either council members do it or consultants do it. Okay, I know it's a lot of information. I hope you're still awake. I'll try my best. I think the interesting part will be the discussion and questions afterwards, but I thought I'll start with an overview. It's maybe not only a change, but it's mainly clarification on the membership type. So we actually went through the membership types we have, and then defined for each of them which title they can use, if they can be council member, if they can be committee or work group member, and if they can be a program director and or supervisor of a resident. And then of course also what the fees should look like. Just to tell you before, it was not really specified about the committee and working group members. So it was not always clear. And if I go through this table, you see we have basically two big categories, which are, I would say, either diplomats or members. The diplomats can be certified members, as certified diplomats, sorry. So these are actually the active diplomats, and they are allowed to use the title ECLAM and also the European Veterinary Specialist title, and they can actually be a member of all council committees and program directors. and of course they pay the full fee amount. So this is actually let's call them the normal members. If for some reason a certified diplomat, and the reasons how this is can happen are defined in the bylaws, becomes a non-certified diplomat, the most frequent one will be that they are not practicing the right or the appropriate number of hours in the field, and then they are becoming a non-certified diplomat, and they can still use the ECLAM title, but they have to add non-certified. They're not allowed to use the European Veterinary Specialist title anymore, and they cannot become council members, but they can help in the committees, and they can be co-supervisors of programs and of residents, and their fee is reduced. If a non-certified diplomat or a certified diplomat gets retired, then they can use the title diplomat ECLAM retired. They can become council members and committee members and co-supervisors. So not program directors and solely responsible, but they can be co-supervisors. And the fee are as at the moment, they have no fees to pay. So this is one big category. It's the diplomats that basically can be in these categories. The other big categories are members. So these are not necessarily diplomats. So it's either the honorary member or the associate members. Honorary members can be, we said, a person in the bylaws. It doesn't necessarily have to be a vet. It doesn't necessarily have to be a diplomat, but it can be. In case it's not a diplomat, they can use the title honorary member of ECLAM only. They cannot become council members, but they can be advisors for committees, and they can be co-supervisors. Honorary membership is for lifetime because it's an honor and there's no fee. And there's a maximum of 10% of the members that can be honorary members. The associate members are, again, a person, not necessarily a vet, who have done an extraordinary achievement within the laboratory animal medicine field. They can, if they're not diplomats, they have the title associate members of ECLAM. Same duties basically as the honorary members, and they also pay no fee. The difference is that they will only have this for 5 years, and then they will have to be re-evaluated if they are still associate member or not. And there's a maximum of 5% of these members. And the idea is here, for example, if you have in certain alternate residencies a co-supervisor who's not a diplomat of our college, that we can actually make them an associate member of our college. Okay, this is about the membership. And so these are the major changes I wanted to introduce, and I just wanted to give you a glance on what we are working for the policies and procedures. So that's actually in the end the final idea, that we have basically a handbook of all policies and procedures structured by topic and also by council and by committee. And you can go through that list. You will see we already have quite a few, if not most of these procedures defined. We just have to now put them on paper and or structure them in the same way. And then once we have done that, the idea would be that we have defined procedures. It's clear for everyone which role they have and how it's done. I think this is especially important for onboarding of new council and committee members, because as I said at the beginning, I felt overwhelmed when I joined council. What exactly do I need to do, and what is what are all the duties of council? And now I could go specifically to the constitution and bylaws, get my general idea, and then go in here and see the policy and procedure with actually really the task of council and how they do it. And also information, if you're looking for certain information, it can be found much easier. And the idea is to make that available to all the college or all members, and so that it's easy to find. So basically it will be on the website and you can go and have a look, and everyone will see, for example, how we approve payments over 1,500 euros. So there's already a policy and procedure in place for that, and more things will come. And last thing I want to mention before I open the question, or before you can ask questions, actually, this is now not the everything set in stone. We can still make changes in the future, as it has always been. So this is the current description how you can make amendments to the constitution and bylaws, and this is the proposed one. It's following the same logic. We have a small change that we don't say it's 10% of the members, it's now 10 members. Again, for simplicity, I think it's easier to know, okay, I have to find for 10 than to calculate first how many members do we have, and so on and so forth. It's the same day, same time frame, 30 days in advance. Of course, they cannot violate the policies and procedures of EBVS vote. And then it needs 2/3 of the members present at the AGM or through electronic ballot that make basically that we can make a change or not. So we can have, or we still have the same procedure to make changes in the future. And with that, I stop. I know it was a lot, and I hope there are many questions that we try to answer as good as we can. And yeah, please ask your questions. And I see that more people have joined, so thanks a lot. Okay, Marta, you have a question. Yeah, raise your hand or put it in the chat, whatever.
Yeah, very, very upfront, I think. But now the seat of the college is in the UK, and the constitution says that a European specialty college like ECLAM is mostly for addressing vets in the EU member states. If you look at the EBVS policies and procedures, you can see that at least as a minimum, the European economic space is included, meaning Norway and Iceland being included, and also some associated countries like Switzerland. However, I find no direct link to the UK, and I question the seat of the college, the formal seat of the college to be still UK based if that's not resolved. And I just, for instance, Tim Morris to be more educated on that than I am, but it sounds strange to have the seat outside the eligible countries.
I think it's the question where Europe starts and ends comes up quite frequently, how to define that. And I think in our constitutional bylaws now we have, I'm just going and looking for the exact wording, for as a requirement to sit the exam, which basically is then also, to become a diplomat. It says, be licensed or eligible to be licensed to practice veterinary medicine in a European country. So it's pretty broad. And it also opens unless specifically exempted from this obligation by the council. And that's also in line with EBVS. So we have the option to have members outside of Europe if the college thinks it's appropriate. And I think with that definition, we're quite broad and we don't limit ourselves. So that's maybe in general about who can become a member. About the question about the where we are registered. I think as far as I know, the majority, or at least many colleges of EBVS are still registered in the UK. And I don't heard that there's a need to change that because I don't think that EBVS is linked to European Union. I think these are two different things.
Then once more, look at the text that you propose in the fundamentals of the college, what we are.
I mean, it's I'm not sure to what we referred, but I mean, we say we're incorporated in the UK. I mean, that's our legal address right now. It has been France in the past, so now it's the UK. And further it says, in European countries, so it's not specific. Or maybe I don't understand fully the question.
It does say, Stefan, in 2.2 that the college is part of the general scheme for veterinary specialization in the European Union, which I think we copied straight from the EBVS. So we probably ought to consider changing that, because we have members in Israel and the US and
yes,
lots of places, as well as Sweden and Norway, Switzerland. So that's a good point. Perhaps we should change that to just say veterinary specialization in Europe.
In Europe, exactly.
Okay.
And actually, that what I said before with EBVS and having members outside of Europe, that was discussed there, and it's possible because, for example, the surgery college, actually they gave all American college boarded surgeons automatically the European title without an addition, and they can still do that if the college thinks there is an appropriate contribution to the college from these members.
Okay, my question would be to look into that carefully. Also, who is allowed to handle personal data and stuff like that, because it may be critical.
Maybe Janet can comment on the personal data and data protection, because she has been active in that, and we have already done something in that respect, right?
Yeah, we do adhere to GDPR in so much as we can, and I'm the official GDPR representative, and I don't know what the UK is doing about its adherence to GDPR. Maybe Tim knows more about it than I do, but yeah, we're adhering as closely as we can to GDPR, and certainly have no plans to change that. The main reason for moving our registration from reasons, plural, moving the registration to the UK, number one, and I think most important, it gives us legal standing in the UK as a company, which protects the directors from legal liability. And this was not available to us when we were registered in France. And another reason is a practical one. When we were registered in France, everything had to be translated into French and submitted every time we changed the constitution and bylaws. And it's just easier to do things in English, which is the official language of all EBVS colleges. And as Stefan pointed out, I think at least half of the EBVS colleges, as well as Laboratory Animals Limited and FILASA, are registered in the UK. So I don't think we're particularly odd or outliers in being registered in the UK. And we can change it. I have actually looked at registering the college in Ireland instead. But the problem always becomes you have to have directors who are based in that country. And at present, we only have one diplomate in Ireland. So it was just easier in the UK. We have 11 diplomates in the UK, and it was just easier to have the registration done there. But we can change it if the college wants to in the future. It's difficult and time consuming, but it's not terribly expensive. And if we need to change it, we can.
I think the big problem here is that actually in Europe, it's not foreseen that there's a European society. So there's no legal base for that. So that's why every society has to have some country base, and that I've been now involved the third time in that, and it's everywhere you go, you have some advantages and disadvantages, and one of the major ones is always the language. I think it makes our lives much easier if everything is in English. Otherwise, we have to translate it, as Janet said, back and forth all the time. Tim, you had a question as well.
Well, I can probably amplify a bit on the comment made, which is complimentary. But first, you can probably blame me for your complicated constitution, because I can blame Axel as well for we cobbled it together almost in a weekend to to allow Anne Dominique to go with a piece of paper to hit EBVS over the head with to say, let us in. But also Anne Dominique will probably attest that traveling to the local mairie with some paper documents and presenting them and was just a general hassle. So as regards company incorporation or incorporation in the UK, there are probably two things. EBVS on its website says focuses on veterinary specializations in the member states of the European Union and its neighbours. But actually, if it's a concern, you need to look at the incorporation document, actually, the primary data of the EBS. That would be, if there is a disconnect there. Now, I would suspect that if there is a disconnect, EBS might want to do something about it because they wouldn't want to alienate quite a lot of colleges. And it's not only the UK, but whether it's Israel, North America, whatever. But I think the key message there is that, and this is where was my original point, was that the Constitution bylaw doesn't stand alone. It does stand in relation to EBVS, and Marty's point then is so the sanity check on that issue and perhaps some other ones. Now, the simple point was going to be made, and being sad, I did actually scan through the Constitution before, and you've done a great job. You've really simplified things. Well done. My only comment as a safety check is that you are currently incorporated in the UK, and wherever you're incorporated, you ought to check that everything you do is compatible, or at least not contradictory. So probably the main areas are on quorums, notice for calling meetings, the role of committees, because in a company, the directors can have a subcommittee, but you're having functional committees and making it clear that there isn't any conflict between those, a committee with one label and a committee with another label. There are a few bits that you need to be a little bit careful on. For example, the majority to change the rules strongly at the constitutional level is 75% in British company law. You said 2/3. So once now you've pinned it down, you've actually got quite a short incorporation document called the Articles of Association. I think Janet will probably moan at me, but she's very familiar with that and the bizarre use of English language in such documents. So just a sanity check against those. There are a few inconsistencies, and it's clear in that incorporation that is the primary document, that it supersedes everything else you do. Just make sure it isn't incompatible. And I think the same point with Marty, make sure that it isn't incompatible with the BVS as well. But the take-home message, I would say, for me, is very well done indeed.
Thanks a lot, Tim, for this comment. Fully agree on your points. We still have to make a lot of double checks again. We have done already quite some, I can tell you. But maybe Janet, you can also comment on the registration in the UK, because that's also something which is a bit special, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate Tim's comments, and you're right, I need to go back and double check again. However, my understanding from our accountant is that there is a difference between we are a company limited by guarantee in the UK, and we had to use their standard boilerplate articles of association when we formed the company. But even in that law, again, my understanding is that is kind of out with the constitution and bylaws and the procedures for the membership. So there are the directors of the company, of which there are actually only 3, and those are all UK-based diplomates. And then there is the membership. So we can do things like form committees that involve the membership that are not related to the legal function of the company. But you're absolutely right. I need to check probably with a solicitor about this to make sure that we're not getting in the way. I will say that having looked at all of the colleges that are incorporated in the UK, that I don't think we're a particular outlier, because there are a number of colleges, for example, that have only one director, and that person is the accountant. So at least we have 3 diplomates who are directors of the company, who have an annual meeting and approve the minutes. And we have a UK accountant that prepares our returns and checks over them and audits our accounts and so on. So you're right, it is a little bit odd to have a company that is kind of in a way separate from the college, but we're not the only ones. And there are provisions even in UK law for the membership to be different from the directors of the company.
Yeah, I think that's really the point of confusion, because it is a member of the college, also a member of the company.
Right.
And you want to be explicit on that and then say who are the members of the company, because
Right.
I don't think that's clear. So members of the company, 5% of those can call a special general meeting.
Right.
So actually that's a thing for the board to discuss. But what I would say generally, having, and the reason I brought it up is I'm involved with quite a lot for not-for-profits, charities and my own companies. The thing I would say to the wider ECLAM community, in general, it is very easy to work the system in the UK. And so be careful of what you wish for moving it somewhere else. In fact, one of the things I would say is that we're suffering with, you may have seen the criticism leveled at the British system for Russian, not very nice people setting up lots of companies, because it is so straightforward. But it is very straightforward. Basically, checking the records once a year and sending 13 or 15 pounds. That's it. And the directors get a lot of protection from that, which is a very good thing. So be careful what you wish for.
Right. One of the reasons I was thinking of going to Ireland is A, their official language is also English, and B, having read very quickly through their regulations, they appear to have been derived quite a lot from the British ones. So it wouldn't be a huge jump. Now, the other thing is there is a big difference in Britain between a registered charity and a company. And this causes confusion with European companies quite frequently, is that in UK we're not a non-profit. We are a non-profit because we say we're not making any profit, but that's in Britain, we would have to be registered as a charity in order to be what most people think of as a non-profit. And that would give us a lot of benefits in that we could, for example, buy software and things as a non-taxable entity. However, it would increase our accounting fees immeasurably to do the annual returns as a charity, and not all accountants can do those. So there's a financial consideration there. And so again, we can change it if, as and when we need to. At the moment, our annual turnover is nowhere near what is going to get us into VAT area. So we don't have to pay taxes anyway. We have to file a return, but we don't actually have to pay any tax.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot. And maybe just a big thank to Tim and Dominic, who are here today for writing the first set of constitutional bylaws. It's always easier to edit something that's there than start from scratch. Thanks a lot for all that work at that time.